On June 9, 1898, the British forced the Qing government to sign the Boundary Expansion of Hong Kong Ordinance, which leased the area north of Boundary Street on the Kowloon Peninsula and 262 nearby islands. As the War of Liberation progressed towards victory, Chairman Mao and the main comrades in the party also began to plan to solve the Hong Kong issue. Due to the complicated national conditions at that time, although most of Chiang Kai-shek's troops had been liquidated from the mainland, there was still a huge amount of bandit suppression work and international affairs that needed to be dealt with by the central government. At the same time, Hong Kong is also very important to our country, but the party organization really can't send manpower to take care of it. Even so, Chairman Mao is still doing his best to judge the direction of the Hong Kong issue. Chairman Mao proceeded from the fact that New China needed Hong Kong as a free port for economic and cultural exchanges between China and foreign countries, and the fact that Britain had just liberated would not easily let Hong Kong return in advance, and decided to take back Hong Kong when the time was right. In 1840, in order to knock on the door of China, Britain launched the First Opium War. In the end, the Qing government signed the Nanjing Treaty with the British government, and was forced to hand over Hong Kong Island. Just over 10 years later, Britain and France jointly launched the Second Opium War, which finally forced the Qing government to sign the Sino-British Treaty of Beijing and ceded the southern part of the Kowloon Peninsula. In 1898, in order to further expand its interests in China, the British government forced the dispirited Qing government to sign the special articles on the expansion of Hong Kong's boundary. Since then, Hong Kong has completely left the embrace of the motherland and started a century-long journey of wandering. Although it has been forcibly ruled by the British for 100 years, the people of Hong Kong have always fought against it. They still retain a sincere patriotic heart and maintain the dignity of the Chinese people. In 1945, Japan announced its surrender, and the Hong Kong issue began to surface again. Chiang Kai-shek wanted to take this opportunity to regain Taiwan, but was directly stopped by the British government. The British government is still unwilling to give up its huge interests in China. This gentleman's country in Europe and the United States has shown its greedy nature. In 1946, Chairman Mao made an important speech on the Hong Kong issue when he was in the cave. He said, "Party organizations must fully respect the past, present, and future of the Hong Kong issue. Because the decision of the Qing government cannot be counted as the decision of our party today, but the attitude of the British side must also be respected, because the current development of Hong Kong is promoted by the British. If Hong Kong is forcibly recovered, it may cause Hong Kong to lose its century-old economic foundation, which is a very uneconomical thing. Therefore, the four words 'respect Hong Kong' have become the most basic attitude of the party organization to solve the Hong Kong issue. Through the important port of Hong Kong, providing a steady stream of supplies to support the people's volunteers can ensure that the soldiers can fight the enemy on the battlefield without worry, and the United States can only watch the failure of the war and the rise of New China. Several cases have proved how powerful Chairman Mao's foresight was back then, but at this time there are still people who put forward a point of view: the exchanges between major countries are based on interests, come because of interests, and disappear when the interests run out. If one day the United States and Western countries promise Britain greater interests in Hong Kong, then the United Kingdom may adjust its guns to confront the mainland. The time came to 1962 and 1963. Due to the severe drought, Hong Kong was short of water and the water storage was in an emergency. Chairman Mao decided to give priority to water diversion for Hong Kong's canal construction. The 3 years of natural disasters in our country have just passed, and a lot of manpower and material resources have been spent to rescue Hong Kong Island under the hands of other governments. Most of the leaders expressed their opposition. But Chairman Mao said that water must be supplied, and everyone will understand how important my decision is in the future. A friend in adversity sees the truth. At this time, we helped Hong Kong overcome difficulties. From then on, we have the right to comment on Hong Kong affairs. In September 1982, British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher visited China, and Comrade Deng Xiaoping warmly welcomed her. On the morning of September 24, Mrs. Thatcher first went to the Xinjiang Hall of the Great Hall of the People to talk with Deng Xiaoping for a while, and then went to the Fujian Hall to talk with Deng Xiaoping. The confrontation between China and Britain on the Hong Kong issue began. After the two exchanged ordinary pleasantries, Mrs. Thatcher single-handedly raised the issue of Hong Kong. When Mrs. Thatcher came up, she played the two cards of the three treaties are valid and maintaining Hong Kong's prosperity and stability cannot be separated from the United Kingdom, insisting that the three treaties must be abided by. She said in a strong tone, to maintain Hong Kong's prosperity, it must be governed by the United Kingdom. If China announces that Hong Kong will be taken back, it will have a disastrous impact and consequences on Hong Kong. She pointed out that the United Kingdom still hopes to continue the lease in Hong Kong. Deng Xiaoping certainly refused to give in to Mrs. Thatcher, known as the Iron Lady. Deng Xiaoping made it clear, there is no need to talk about the issue of sovereignty. Even though Deng Xiaoping had become so tough, Mrs. Thatcher was still unrelenting until Deng Xiaoping said, China is poor now. But the Chinese are not afraid of death in war. While Mrs. Thatcher was shocked, Deng Xiaoping also pointed out, the mainland used so much money to build a canal from Dongguan to Hong Kong in the extremely difficult period. Over the years, Hong Kong has accepted the mainlands. If the mainland then abandons Hong Kong and hands it over to Britain, it will disappoint the Chinese people. Deng Xiaoping said calmly, Chairman Mao had long expected the situation today. Hong Kong's water supply is all provided by the Chinese government. If the Chinese government cuts off the water source, Hong Kong will become a dead port. At this point, Margaret Thatcher understood that Deng Xiaoping's talk was clearly telling herself that there was no way to continue talking about the Hong Kong issue. The meeting between Mrs. Thatcher and Deng Xiaoping was originally scheduled for 1.5 hours, but it was actually extended by 50 minutes, which shows the intensity of the debate between the two sides. In this dialogue, the return of Hong Kong is inevitable, because my country was already ready to take back Hong Kong as early as when Chairman Mao was still there. With the joint efforts of the Chinese and British governments in the spirit of friendship, cooperation, and mutual understanding, the Sino-British joint statement on the Hong Kong issue was initialed in Beijing, announcing that the Chinese government will resume the exercise of sovereignty over Hong Kong on July 1, 1997. Return Hong Kong to China on the same day. At 0 o'clock on July 1, 1997, Hong Kong finally returned to the embrace of the motherland. This result was not easy. Since then, Hong Kong's century-old history of humiliation has come to an end, and Hong Kong has become a part of China.